Firearms are always in the news, and they're always in the news in the U.S. presidential elections. Hillary Clinton on the warpath against them, but now comes an expert with his book called The War on Guns. You can guess who I'm talking about. It's my friend, Dr. John Lott, who joins us from the Crime Prevention Research Center via Skype in Philadelphia. Dr. Lott, great to see you again. Welcome back to the program.
It's great to talk to you again, Ezra.
Well, it's a presidential season, so of course the war on guns ramps up. I understand that for the first time ever, Hillary Clinton, the Democratic presidential candidate, has not even tried to get the endorsement of the police unions, of the Fraternal Order of Police, or whatever the exact name of it is. I think, what would you say about my theory that anti-gun mania on the left has now morphed into anti-cop mania, and it's sort of blurring with the anti-cop vibrations of the Black Lives Movement and some of the extremist anti-authority ideologies out there? What do you make of that?
I think you may have something there. It's been kind of amazing. Some of the left-wing groups have called for the police to be disarmed. Some of them have called for the abolition of police, believe it or not. But there's surely a lot more hostility towards police than there's been in the past in terms of the Democrats. A lot of the unions, a lot of police groups were upset that mothers who had lost their children to police shootings spoke at the convention, but the Democrats weren't interested. It looked like to have the relatives of deceased police officers attend and speak. Yeah. And so the police have been upset for a while, but there's surely been a schism between them. And gun control is one of the issues. If you read the questionnaire that the police union sent out, they said that they wanted a presidential candidate who strongly supported the Second Amendment. In fact, they referred to the Second Amendment as sacrosanct. And they said that it was a huge mistake to think that gun control would help reduce crime.
Well, that's fascinating because in Canada, at least, there's a great divide between the police chiefs and the cops on the street. And I find that in Canada, the police chiefs are often the most politically correct and politically liberal and politically supportive of gun control. If I hear you right, you're saying that police political groups in the United States, they seem to be more united in the right to bear arms. Or is that just the rank and file cops? Are the chiefs in the states pro-gun control too?
Right. Well, I think both groups support gun ownership. The rank and file support it even more strongly. You look at surveys of police, and it's hard to find any other group in the population in the U.S. that more strongly supports gun ownership than police. Police know the value to themselves of having guns, and they also realize that they, while they're extremely important in solving crime, almost always arrive on the crime scene after the crime's been committed. And they're very sympathetic towards making sure that people are able to protect themselves. Well, if you look at surveys of police officers, generally you'll find about 90-some% strongly support things like concealed carry laws or gun ownership generally without restrictions. Whereas for police chiefs, you're probably someplace in the high 60% range.
I'm very pleasantly surprised to learn these things from you, because if I were to take my knowledge about guns and gun politics from the mainstream media, I would guess, listening to the noisy chiefs up here, that chiefs don't want any private citizens to have firearms at all, that they want a monopoly on guns. But what you're telling me is statistically, no. Cops want citizens to be armed allies against criminals.
Right. Well, I mean, you have similar biases in the United States in terms of the media. There's two groups of police chiefs. There's the International Association of Police Chiefs, which has about 100 members. 25 of those are actually from other countries. And then there's the National Association of Chiefs of Police, which have something over about 3,000 members. And often the media goes to the International Association, and they're much more in favor of gun control than the National Association is. So, you know, the media goes and talks to whoever they want to. A couple of the chapters I have in The War on Guns goes through and looks at surveys of academics. And academics, when you look at economists and criminologists, are much more supportive of gun ownership than you would guess by looking at the New York Times. The New York Times, for example, only seems to be able to find pro-gun control academics to be able to interview. You just never find somebody who would actually tell the New York Times that the gun control regulations are counterproductive. But if you look at surveys of economists, for example, you'll get 80, 90% of economists think that private ownership of guns deter criminals, for example.
Everything I've seen from you so far is a statistical or science-based, pragmatic answer to crime, as opposed to sort of a spiritual or ethical rebuttal. Is that what your new book, The War on Guns, is like? Is it facts and figures?
Yeah, I mean, there are plenty of people who go and argue Second Amendment. That's not what interests me. It's not what got me involved in this to begin with. What interests me is what saves the most lives. And I think that's what concerns most people, at least in the middle of the debate. At one time, I think I was pretty much right in the middle of the debate on guns. My views have changed significantly over time, but it's been because of the empirical evidence that's there. And I think ultimately, everybody cares about what saves the most lives.
The subtitle of your book is Arming Yourself Against Gun Control Lies. You've talked about a couple of those lies. What would you say the number one misconception about gun control is that the mainstream media and left-wing politicians have propagated? If there was one fact that you would want to correct on the public record, what would it be?
Oh, that's a hard question. Well, I mean, I suppose just the general belief that somehow regulating guns in the way they want to do it reduces crime. I mean, you can see this in many different ways, but my own research indicates to me that a lot of these gun control regulations primarily disarm the most vulnerable people in our society, disarm poor blacks that live in high crime urban areas, and make those law-abiding citizens more vulnerable to crime. The police are extremely important in reducing crime. My research convinces me of that. But one thing's clear is the police virtually always arrive on the crime scene after the crime's been committed. And the question is, what can people do best to protect themselves and their families? And owning a gun is consistently the most effective way to do that.
Well, I tell you, it's a pleasure talking with you. Let's have you on more frequently. We have you on from time to time. You're always a fan favorite. Folks, if you're interested in learning the science, the studies, the research on gun control, then this is the book for you. It's called The War on Guns. I've read Dr. Lott's other books on the same subject, and they are an eye-opener. You can get this book on the Amazon link right on this very page on The Rebel. So please do. Dr. Lott, great to talk with you again. Please keep in touch.
Sure. Just one fast thing. A lot of people are familiar with my book, More Guns, Less Crime, but I think this is actually the best book that I've written on guns. Everything from looking across countries in terms of mass public shootings to the impact that a lot of regulations have, like background checks on discriminating against poor blacks, I think people will find interesting.
Thanks for watching. Click here to never miss a Rebel update. Want even more of The Rebel? Well, click here to become a premium member.